So welcome to the Mosaic crash course. We're going to discuss things like materials, techniques and terminology. Before you begin creating mosaics, it's important to understand the materials, language and techniques that shape the art form. This crash course is designed to give you a clear, confident understanding as to what everything is, why it matters, and how to choose what's right for your project without overwhelming you with step-by-step execution just yet. Think of this as your foundation layer. So once you understand the pieces, learning how to use them becomes faster and easier and far more intuitive. So by the end of this course, you'll be able to understand the key materials used in mosaic art and their roles. Recognize common mosaic terminology with confidence. Identify different mosaic techniques and when they're used. Choose appropriate materials based on your project goals. Understand how materials interact with each other. Build a strong mental foundation before moving into practical application. Understanding your mosaic materials. So first up, we've got tesserae. So tesserae are the individual little pieces that you build or that you stick onto your substrate to create the mosaic picture. They vary in material. So usually you've got, your most common ones are ceramic and tiles. And then you've got glass, stone and found objects too. They can vary in sizes and thicknesses and shapes and all sorts of everythings, from texture to finish. Each type influences how your mosaic looks, feels and behaves. So the substrate is your foundation, the surface that your mosaic is built on. It determines things like stability, longevity, and the compatibility with adhesives and other materials, so your tesserae. A well-chosen substrate supports the entire piece. A poor one can compromise it. So talking about adhesives, your bonding materials. Adhesives are what secure the tesserae to your substrate. They vary in things like drying time, their strength, flexibility, and the absorption into surfaces. Understanding adhesive behaviour helps you choose the right one for your style and pace. Grout, a structural and visual element. Grout fills the gaps between the tesserae, yes, but it affects so much more than that. It affects the visual contrast substantially and the overall finish of your piece. It can make or break a piece sometimes. So grout is both functional and aesthetic. It changes how your mosaic is perceived with sealers and finishes. Sealers are used primarily to protect the surfaces, to reduce wear, and to enhance the longevity of your piece. I personally like the texture of it after you've sealed it. Grout can be quite chalky if you run your fingers over it, or if you seal it, it has a nice texture over it. That's my preference on sealing. Not every project requires sealing. I prefer it. But understanding it allows for long-term decisions. So on to mosaic terminology, the language of the craft. So understanding mosaic terminology allows you to follow instructions more easily, communicate clearly between other mosaic artists, and build confidence as you learn. So you've got your key terms. So you've got your tesserae, your substrate, your adhesives, and your grout. And then you have your techniques. So you've got your direct method, and you've got your indirect mesh method that we're going to be covering in this course today. You also have andamento, so andamento is the flow and the direction of the tiles, a massive part of mosaic. And then you have negative space, which is essentially the grout in between the tiles. These terms will appear throughout your learning. So becoming familiar with them at the start makes everything smoother later. So a little bit of a closer look at our mosaic techniques. So you've got your direct method, which is where your tiles are placed directly onto your substrate. This is used for beginner projects, so it's a great starter, easily controlled, and you can gradually build onto it. So the next technique we'll be covering is the indirect mesh method, that I typically just call mesh method. So in this technique, your tiles are arranged separately on a mesh and then transferred to your final piece later on. So this allows for larger, more complex pieces, and for projects requiring pre-planning, so things that require a lot of detail, I like to control the image before I permanently install it in mosaic. So another technique we'll be talking a lot about is the shard painting technique. So this is using irregular broken pieces of tesserae, and it creates flow and texture naturally using those random pieces. It's used for organic, realistic designs, very expressive painterly mosaics, and really using the grout to emphasize the colors of your tesserae as well, not just used as a structural piece or side negative space. So on to choosing the right materials. So choosing the right materials isn't necessarily about what's best. It's about what suits your project. So there's a few things to consider when you're looking at materials. You definitely want to look at location. So is it indoor or is it outdoor? The detail level. Are you doing really fine, realistic detail, or are you doing big, bold shapes? And then your working style. So slow and adjustable. Or do you want it fast, big pieces, fixed, get it done? And then you've got your desired finish that you want to think about as well. So do you want it smooth and textured? Or reflective, soft? So what are you going for? What feeling are you hoping for? So every choice that you make here easily affects the process. It affects how it feels, it affects how it looks, and definitely affects how long it lasts. So how does everything connect? Mosaic isn't a collection of separate pieces. It's a system. Tesserae interact with adhesives. Adhesive interacts with your substrate. And grout interacts with the spaces and the design. So when you understand these relationships, you stop guessing and start mosaicing intentional decisions. So a different way to learn. This crash course focuses on understanding first. You don't need to memorize everything. You don't need to act on everything yet. Just begin to notice. How do materials differ? How techniques change outcomes? What feels intuitive to you? Because once you understand the what and the why, the how becomes something you can learn with confidence, not confusion. So what we're going to do a lot of is interactive learning. So what we're going to focus on is what are you drawn to? So before you focus on the doing, take a moment and reflect on what you're naturally being drawn to when it comes to mosaics. So what mosaics have caught your eye so far? Do you like neat structured designs or more organic flowing pieces? What textures are you drawn to? Do you like smooth and polished or broken shard-like pieces that are all full of movement? Which material stood out to you the most? Is it glass for its shine? Ceramic for its softness? Something natural or more raw? What felt easiest to understand in the moment? Or what was the most exciting? The careful placement and control? Or letting pieces fall together more intuitively? How do you imagine yourself working? Slow and precise? Or relaxed and exploratory? So, a mini reflection. There is no right answers here. It is all personal. What you like is the beginning of your personal style. So, mini challenge. If you move on to the practical lessons, notice what feels natural versus what feels forced, okay? Mosaic responds best when you're working with your instincts, not against them. So, continue learning. What out of these categories interests you? Have a look. Have a explore. Or, let's go straight to the next video.